You're listening to the Hypno Fairy Godmother Show with Shirley Yance, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to the Hypno Fairy Godmother Show. I'm Shirley Yance, clinical hypnotherapist, advocate, and mental health first responder at Whispering Zen Hypnotherapy and Wellness. Thank you for coming to my show where you can come as you are and leave as you want to be. Do you wish that you could more freely enjoy a new healthy habit or just feel more like being you? Let's talk. And although I specialize with the LGBTQIA community, I welcome and work with everyone. So if you need help, I'm here for you. So you know that you can always book a consultation online with me at whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com. One quick note that I want you to mark your calendars with, that as of September the 13th, which is in 3 weeks, you'll be able to hear my show live on the Hypno Fairy Godmother radio show Facebook page. It's the same time at 3 o'clock Pacific, so it's just a different Facebook page. And now, these are my favorite parts of how we get this thing going. So the first thing I want you to do is make sure that you're in a nice, safe place. And that's no driving, working on a project, working with your kids, working with whatever you need to work with. Nice, safe place. And I want you to start by taking a nice, deep breath from your diaphragm. And slowly exhaling with a smile. And now this is part 2, and everybody knows that I love part 2 the most. So what I want you to do is wiggle your toes. Come on, wiggle your toes. Next thing I need you to do is wiggle your buns. Come on. You know how you like to wiggle your buns. Squeeze them in tight. Do what you need to do, because you can't do this without smiling. And I can't tell you to wiggle your buns and squeeze them in without smiling. And that's what's important, is for you to feel more confident and know that if you needed to do this at any time, that no one will even know that you're doing it. How fun is that? So the next thing I need you to do, this is a 3-parter, is the last thing is to take that one more deep breath. And this time when you exhale, do it with an affirmation. I like to say, I got this, or it's going to be okay. These little affirmations, sometimes they help you get through the week since it's Monday. Sometimes they just help you get through the day. It's whatever you need to do to just get through. And, you know, if you've got a little extra time right now, you might want to, move your legs, rotate a little bit more, roll your shoulders, rotate your head both ways. Rotate your shoulders again, and know that in just a really short amount of time, you have now relaxed everything from your toes to your nose. That's right. So in a short amount of time, you can be fully relaxed. And that's what we're here about. We're here about your mental health and things that you can do to help improve your mental health and things to empower you. And today we are going to be talking about a little more about empowerment. But first, I'd like to thank Interfanatic Digital Marketing for sponsoring the show. They are the internet fanatics, upgrading performance since 1999. Interfanatics will be there, and they have the answer. For over 20 years, they've had the answer. Interfanatic is a reliable source for websites and digital marketing. Interfanatic runs lean and delivers high on value, because that's how they keep you happy, successful customers. That's Interfanatic. So find the internet fanatics at interfanatic.com. And I'd also like to thank AnnieShirley.com, who have a unique Kickstarter going on to promote her 2 new books, her 2 new Hubble Bubble Tiny Toes books, called What's a Chakra and Hubble Bubble Zodiac for Kids. So check them out today on Kickstarter.com. Just look up Hubble Bubble Zodiac and check it out. Now, I know that I've touched on this before, and this is more of an empowering show on how you can feel better about what you can do at work to make yourself feel more empowered. And we're going to talk a little bit more. This is about making your voice matter, making you matter. So, to start out, you may not think that it's important when it comes to making your voice heard, but power speaking tells us that, you know, listen to the sound of your voice. How does your voice matter? The Wall Street Journal cited a 2012 study that analyzed 120 executives, and the speaker's voice quality accounted for 23%, while what they had to say only accounted for 11%. So the evaluations, the listeners were listening to the passion and the knowledge and the presence, and citing, these were the most important things, was how the person was actually saying. Another study showed that, people who hear recordings of weak and rough and tired, breathy voices saw people that way. And people with normal voices, saw people as sociable and smart and knowing what they were talking about. These are important things to remember, that how your voice comes across um, is just as important as what you're actually trying to say. So, who cares about that? Well, you should definitely care about this. So, what you need to do is, as a quick test, while you're rehearsing what you want to say and how you want to say it, ask yourself a couple questions. Does my voice sound like I'm interested and, and engaged in what I'm talking about? And is my voice interesting to listen to? If you say no to either of these, no matter what your topic is and how, you think you're coming across, your voice is not doing that. So you need to have, and know about the importance of the passion in your voice and the passion in your comments. You don't want to be putting people to sleep or making them turn away if that's what you're, that's not what any of us are going for. um and the power of your voice through your breath. You know how I feel about breath work. It's so important. And too many presenters power their voice from their throat and their upper chest, and they're forcing their voice through their vocal cords, and it's harder to push that out, and that's what makes you sound a little bit breathier. So speech therapists and me recommend that instead you power your voice through your diaphragm. So just before you get to give your presentation, what you want to do is find a nice place where you can start breathing deep and slow from your diaphragm. And the deeper and slower your breaths are, it's going to calm down your central nervous system and help you project your voice with more power and confidence. And this is something that you may not have also thought of when it comes to your diet. Consuming dairy products are going to bring up more mucus, and that's going to make you have to clear your voice more. So, definitely the morning, or especially if you're giving a talk or you have a meeting later in the day, definitely avoid dairy so that you're not constantly clearing your voice, because that's also going to turn people off. So, and from muse.com, which is a site that I love to take information off of, and this is something that we know. I wish it wasn't true, but we know that when you're a woman or a minority, speaking up at work can be especially difficult. You might feel that, it's hard to get even an edgewise, a word in edgewise, or your ideas or feelings won't be taken seriously. Or maybe you feel that you'll be perpetuating a negative stereotype about a minority group or multiple minority groups. Unfortunately, your fears are not unwarranted. Research shows that women speak less than men, even though their perception is that women speak more. For example, and that women in leadership often face negative consequences when being more talkative. So what can you do? Because if you're a woman, people are going to see you and think that you speak more because of how you're perceived, and you don't want to be perceived that way. So, after you've trusted your voice, this is a hard one for a lot of people, and I'm going to go over these a couple times in different ways. So maybe if one way doesn't click with you, maybe another way does. Okay? And this is a really hard one, especially for women. Learn to let go of being liked. Yes. When you speak up in a workplace, especially as a woman in a male dominated department or company, there is a chance that people will think that you're not likable or agreeable. But just because you're liked doesn't mean you're respected, and respect is more important than being liked. Women often have that need to be liked, but it's not going to help you progress in your career or help you reach that goal at the expense of sharing your thoughts and opinions. And when you do get that chance, know exactly what you're going to say and when you're going to say it. And like I said, these are a couple things that I'm going to go over a couple times because I want you to get this down. Now, I'm using women and minorities, but it can also be just for introverts, also have these same problems. Sometimes, the introverts have to practice a little bit more because when you do get the opportunity to say something, you really want to take advantage of it. So, whenever possible, plan what you're going to say and how you're going to say it ahead of time and then rehearse it. Speaking your message out loud will help you solidify the words that you want to use and will help you have the confidence to say it out loud when it counts. If you know what you want to say, you might get some pushback, so be prepared for that as well. Think about all the likely objections and be ready to respond because sometimes people will object to what you're saying just because of who you are, not because they have a good reason. And then think of the best time that you want to say it. Does one of your weekly meetings have a time set aside for people to bring up new ideas? Or is it easier for you to set up an appointment, a one on one, with maybe a supervisor or somebody to get that point across? Hopefully, you'd be able to say it in a meeting, but sometimes those opportunities just don't come around. And think about your language, cutting out filter words and stating things plainly. Instead of I think or I feel, jump right to the point. Filtering out automatic reflex to soften what you're saying because it also shows that you feel less confident about what you're saying. Remove those filter words because the more concise the message, the less time you need to hold people's attention, and that's going to help your voice heard. If there's too many ums and likes, which is something that I constantly work on, sometimes that makes it so your voice isn't heard quite as strongly as it should be. Once again, consider your delivery. 90% of how you're heard is not what you say, but how you say it. Your physical actions, your eye contact, your gestures, your posture, and voice elements such as volume, tone, pacing, and speed affect how people hear and see your message. For example, if you say something too quietly or with an undertone, you might sound like you're asking for permission, not demanding to be heard. And if you're not sure how you come across, record yourself and play it back, paying attention to every aspect of the delivery. Here's another thing that you can do if you're trying to get your point across. Maybe build strategic relationships. If there's a colleague whose input or opinions are always treated with respect, maybe get to know them. See if maybe they'll help you out a little bit. Maybe a sponsorship type relationship, or just ask for their support in a specific situation, or a presentation that you might have where it's often difficult for you to be heard. And this can be male or female, but if you need, if there is that person that can help you out, take advantage of them. Definitely take advantage of your allies because sometimes you need them. And if you need a little more support, look for places outside of the work to build confidence. There are groups and organizations that help women, minorities, and people that maybe are a little more introverted build confidence in the workplace. You might consider working with a career coach one-on-one to build those opportunities and practice your communication skills and build the confidence. Remember, confidence is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. So you're going to have to make sure that you practice, and you're going to have to make sure that you truly believe in what you're saying. And I understand that, when you're in a meeting, especially with this pandemic, we're all doing Zoom meetings, and video meetings can introduce a whole additional set of obstacles about, because it's hard to read people's body language and know that if you're interrupted, it will literally cut off your microphone. So take advantage of the little chat boxes or the little hand raise features if there's something that you want to say. You know, sometimes you don't always get the opportunity to get the big chat box, but hopefully somebody else that may have a little more umph, in your group will see that you're trying to get noticed and allow you that space. So if you get that opportunity, you better be able to handle it, and you better be aware and ready for what you want to say. Um, Zoom has helped us a lot since this pandemic started, but it's in some ways it's also made things a little more difficult. So a lot of people have now gone back to in-person meetings, and some have stayed on Zoom. So if you're back to the in-person meetings, they can be difficult too. You might feel that, there's one or a few people that dominate to the extent that even if you have something set up, you don't know if you're going to get to speak, let alone how you're going to do it. So, and research shows that women are more likely to be interrupted again than men. So, if you know ahead of time that you have something to say, maybe contact the person in charge of the meeting and try to get yourself on the agenda, which will, that way you'll have a dedicated time, and you know that you're actually going to get to say something. And if somebody interrupts you, don't ever yield the floor. Just say something polite, like I was almost done, and then you can have the floor. Sometimes, like I said, women get interrupted twice as much as men do. Minorities get interrupted just as, whether it's any type of minority. A lot of this is hard to say, but a lot of companies will put groups together that maybe are all white men or all one gender, and you're the token, whether it's the token woman, the token minority. And so when you get that opportunity, you need to take full advantage of it. So let's say you have an idea. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay out that idea, and we're going to figure out why it matters. So make sure you're clear on exactly what you're proposing and why it's important and how it's going to impact your team or your company. Is it a small change to a process, or an idea, or does it have to do with a large campaign and affect the whole company? Will it cost money? And what's the ideal outcome? So have all your little ducks in a row before you even start, and do your homework, please. Back up your ideas with evidence, with data, with other research whenever possible. You need to know that not only why your idea is important, but whether it'll work or not, and all the advantages to your idea working. So let's say you've done all that, and you want to kind of make sure that your accomplishments have been noticed. So they say that your accomplishments speak for themselves. They don't. So create a little brag sheet every week. Update your running list of what you've been doing alongside with the numbers and anything else that backs it up. Then chat about it whenever you get the opportunity to managers, teammates, other people in other groups, maybe by the copy machine or the coffee machine. And when somebody asks you how you're doing or what you've been working on, you have an answer to kind of show off a little bit the best of your most recent work. And I understand bragging might be especially difficult for women and minorities and anybody that's been taught to back up a little bit because of the way that we've been socialized. However, there is an art to this. If you frame your accomplishments in a way that show how you're helping your team or your company without erasing yourself, mind you, then it feels less like you're saying something just to boost your own horn and feels more like you're excited about what you wanted to share. That's important, but don't ever give up on, bragging about what you've done. Don't downplay what you've done. Make it the full, toot your own horn sometimes. We all need to toot our own horn sometimes. And it's hard. I have a hard time doing that. I like to tell people that I'm great at, selling somebody else, but I'm horrible at selling me. It's the same thing with, whether you're in a company, whether you work for yourself, whether you sell a product, doesn't matter. Sometimes you just got to tell people I'm really good at this, and this is, you know, and you should know why I'm good at this, and you should know how I'm good at this. But let's say that you work at a normal job, a 9 to 5 or an office job, and you want to give feedback or suggestions to somebody else. Because working on a team means sometimes giving feedback to other people's suggestions or other people's work. For example, a presentation that they're going to give to a company wide meeting, or maybe the designs for a campaign. Some people may not be too receptive to constructive criticism, and we all know who those people are. Could be you, but it could be somebody else. And when you're a woman or that minority group, the possibility of being dismissed is even higher. So, the best way to have your feedback taken seriously is state it clearly, concisely, and focus on the person's work and not their style and who they are. So, back up your feedback again with evidence and examples, and give concrete suggestions for improvement when you can. The feedback, if feedback is vague or it's a broad feedback, it's easier to be ignored and people will definitely take it personally. And you never really want somebody to take it personally if you're just trying to give them suggestions on, maybe ways that they can improve it or maybe things that they should add or subtract. But let's say you have to call out somebody's bad behavior. When you have to do that and you have to call out somebody's bad behavior, things get a whole lot trickier. And as long as they didn't do something particularly egregious, it's important to tackle the problem and not, again, tackle the person, because maybe the person was unaware of what they were doing. Now, most of the time, people are aware when they're doing something that, if they have bad behavior, but maybe not. So, you can go to them. If you need to, you can go to HR or whoever a representative is to, you know, make sure that somebody understands, but still, be concise, have examples. The same thing is when you're, giving out when you're doing constructive criticism. So let's say, however, that instead of constructive criticism or pointing out somebody's behavior, you want to elevate others. Doesn't that sound like a better thing than doing all the constructive criticism? So, beyond making your own voice heard, you can also help others. And whether or not you're part of a marginalized group or they're part of a marginalized group, if you see a colleague being ignored or trying to speak up, say something. If you learn, about an act of bias, again, think about how you can act and how you can help. Don't ignore it. We're all accountable for doing hard work, taking risks, and sometimes feeling uncomfortable. But you have to speak up in big and small ways if we want to have a true equality in our workplace. Sometimes, you have to stand up for other people. And you would hope in return that if you were feeling this way, that people would, of course, stand up for you. So I wanted to point out that the above tips can help, your voice be heard. But if you're constantly being ignored subtly or overly, you feel like you're being discriminated against, know that you're worth more. Don't continue to subject yourself to this type of treatment. You don't have to work in a toxic environment or where you feel emotionally or physically unsafe. That's not just how it is or what you have to do to make ends meet. There are companies and teams out there that will value you and your voice. And sometimes the best option is to go try to find one of those. You don't ever have to stay where you're not comfortable. Have pride in your work. Know what you're worth. Know what you're worth emotionally. Know what you're worth financially. If you think that because of who you are or what you represent, that maybe you're being undervalued, get out. There are many places where you can look for other jobs. I don't suggest quitting one before you find another one, but sometimes you have to do that because you have to feel safe. You have to feel like what you have to say is just as important to as the way you say it. So don't ever let somebody take advantage of you in that way ever. Again, according to Leadership Freaks blog, which is also another great one, these are some important things to remember when you're trying to get your voice to matter in different situations. You need to talk more when listening is occurred first. So listen with your ears and sometimes your heart, because the more you need to say, the more you need to listen first. This is important because sometimes we think about all the things we want to say without having listened to what's going on around them. Sometimes people need to talk when somebody else maybe needs an affirmation. Maybe somebody needs that encouragement to just say, it's okay, you've got this, or together, we've got this. Just that little encouragement that sometimes you need to speak up when somebody needs that. Talk a little bit more when talking connects you with others. Is what you're saying, does that help somebody else? Does it just help you? It can help everybody, but you're allowed to speak up. You're allowed to talk about it. Talk and speak up when issues are being dodged. Call out those big elephants. If there's something that people are not talking about, like maybe a situation that everybody's trying to ignore, maybe a situation with a person that everybody's trying to ignore, you know, just go for it. Talk about it. If you're in a meeting and or if you just see around the office that there's a big problem, sometimes the best you can do is, talk about the big elephant in the room, talk about the situation. Sometimes it's all for the better. You can talk more when the top stifles the bottom. Confront those authoritarians. If the top or the managers just don't care what the other people have to say, guess what? You need to say something about it, especially if it happens all the time. The more that you feel like you're being pushed down, or the more that everybody feels like being pushed down. We've all had, good managers, we've all had bad managers. It's okay. But sometimes you need to say it, and sometimes you need to go to, like I said, sometimes you need to go to HR or a representative or the person above the person and just point it out. Tell them what's been going on. Have your facts, have your dates, your times. This is one of those things where you want to, if you start seeing something consistently, start making little notes. So that way, when you go in, you have all your notes, you have dates, times, everything to back up what you're seeing. So, sometimes you need to talk a little more when what and how are on the table. Leaders explain how in their own way. So, if you know what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, then that's your opportunity, especially if you've already done the research. It's one of those scary things. It's one of those very scary things that that you need to do, but I know you can do it. Sometimes you need to talk more when when you see the big picture and other people don't. So it's kind of like seeing the forest through the trees. You see the big picture, you see how things can change and improve everything. You know how the project can be better. You know how maybe a small campaign or maybe a big campaign are you know people kind of get confused, and sometimes they're just picking out little things. So if you see it, go for it. That makes you sound more, that makes you sound more confident, and that's what this is about. It's about making you feel and sound more confident. Know that blabbers are going to keep on blabbering, so interrupt them. If somebody is taking over a meeting and they just won't stop, raise your hand, cut in, make a noise to just get them to stop until they make a point. Ask them if they'd like to make a point. Ask them if they have a point. They may not like it, but it's still one of those things that you really need to do, or else nothing's going to be accomplished. You know, talk a little bit more when urgency overshadows priority. So let's say that you have a project that's due and people are still not under control and people are still kind of all over the place as to how they're going to handle it. If you know and you're running out of time, don't let somebody else take control. I know, because I know some of you. Take control of the situation. You have it in you. You're just too scared to do it, and everybody's too scared to do it. But if you've got a priority and you don't want to get stuck behind the eight ball proverbially, then you need to take control. You also need to talk more when values are being violated. That goes back to standing up for coworkers. If you feel like somebody's overstepping their bounds, if they're breaking company rules, if they're, any little thing, and don't make it nitpicky. Nitpicky is not what we're looking for. But what you need to do is, if you feel that somebody's values are being, overtaken, then stand up for them, because that means that you're also standing up for yourself. Talk more when information is needed and you're the one that has it. You've done your research. You've done your backup research. You've figured out everything, but still nobody else has that information and you do. Don't hold it to yourself. Again, it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes, but you can still do this. You can still go for it. And know that if somebody else is talking and they say something and you want more information, when curiosity kind of goes, so what else? Or what can I do? Or what can we do as a group? Ask questions. You don't just have to sit there. You're allowed to ask questions. And that doesn't mean you're taking over the meeting. That just means that you're asking questions. If we don't ask, we don't know. And if somebody says something that you're unsure about, always ask questions. There's no stupid questions. I'm telling you. I've asked a million of them. There are no stupid questions. Um, when confusion reigns, if things are getting really confusing and everybody's talking and the biggest problem you're going to have is you're adding another voice to the confusion. So maybe you can find a way to kind of slow things down. Sometimes you really need to slow things down when when these meetings are happening, because confusion can bring on more confusion. And sometimes online, and sometimes when you're sitting there, we've all been in meetings where everybody's talking and nobody's listening. And at that point, nobody's making a point, nobody's helping out. All you're doing is just they're talking to hear their voice heard. And then people start talking louder, and people start talking louder. This doesn't help anybody. It absolutely doesn't help anybody, you know? And talk more if you're an introvert, because the silence of introverts makes extroverts a little uneasy, because they know that eventually you're just going to either explode or you're going to take over. So usually an extroverted person realizes, or thinks they realize, that they're always going to be in charge, that they're always going to have all the answers. This doesn't always happen. So, if you're an introvert, just bide your time. Know when the best time is to say what you want to say, because you've already done your research. You've already got things to back yourself up. You've already, got the breathing down. You're ready to go. You've done everything that you know that you can do. When you get the opportunity, take it. And it's going to freak out some of those extroverts, are like, where did that voice come from? I've seen people that never say a word all of a sudden out of the blue say the most profound things and fix, literally fix everything that's gone wrong in the meeting, and put it all together for everybody else to see. And the most important thing is talk about others sometimes more than you talk about yourself. And we talked about the brag sheet, and I totally believe talking about the brag sheet, but I think let's see, it's not more important, but it's as important when you're talking about others and you're promoting other people's ideas. And if somebody in your group has a better idea than you did, let them tell it. Point it out. If you get the opportunity to say something and all you're saying is, I think we should listen to so and so, I think we should listen to so and so. What that does is that helps them grow their confidence. And maybe they've been doing all the same research for their idea and facts to back it up, and the do's and the don'ts. And, they've been working just as hard as you have. So, sometimes I think it's better that, we talk about other people. We talk about others. I love to do that. I love to give somebody, I've been in great big Zoom meetings and other meetings. And, the most important person that talks is the person that never talks. Think about that. If you're the person that never talks, you will freak people out when you're the one that says something. And the most important thing I can tell you is educate yourself and others on how you can help and different things that you can do to make your voice and make yourself feel better, make your voice heard. Don't, make sure that you're always standing up for yourself. And all of these things that I've given you, you can use in a business situation, but sometimes you need to use them in a personal situation. Sometimes you need to feel better about yourself. Sometimes you need others to know that, you need to be acknowledged. You need to feel that you're part of the situation. If you're in a relationship and only one person's point of is getting across, that's how it'll help you personally. The more confident you are in every situation, the more confident you feel at work, the more confident you feel in maybe starting your own business, the more confident you're going to feel in a like traditional work situation. And it doesn't matter where you work, it absolutely doesn't. Some of these may have sounded like you're working in a big office building. Not necessarily. You can work anywhere. Everybody has meetings. Doesn't matter whether you work at a little tiny shop, doesn't matter whether you work at a Fortune 500 company. Everybody has meetings. You could have two people in an office, two people in an organization, and you're still going to have meetings. So if you're being overpowered by that other person, use some of these tips and stand up for yourself. And if you own a business, like I've said before, there are so many things that you can do to reduce the stigma and reduce the stress and make your employees feel happier. You know, tailor programs and approaches to your company's culture and existing strengths. So, have programs to maybe help people that, like a mentorship. If you see that you have quite a few people that, kind of stand back and never say anything, maybe a mentorship is what your company needs. Mention your commitment to, a healthy workplace. And by healthy, it's not just physically healthy, it's also mentally healthy. Think about these things. When you mention your company's commitment to its overall culture, say that we respect everybody and actually mean it. Put that into your HR documents, put that into your policies and procedures that, certain things will not be tolerated, and stick to those. Don't let somebody overtake, you know, or get preferred treatment over anybody else. That's never what we want. Train your leaders. So if you have managers, train them to look for things like somebody's getting bullied or there's a lot of disrespect. Now, sometimes it's the managers and bullies that are doing that, but hopefully, these managers and bullies will, you know, will see what's going on and maybe pull you aside to ask you how you're doing. And that also has it doesn't matter whether it's three people, it doesn't matter whether it's 300 people, any type of situation. If a manager sees somebody being disrespected in any way, they should have the training, the knowledge, they should have the commitment to stand up for that person or pull them aside. Don't make a big deal, but pull them aside and ask, is there something I can help with? Is there a situation I don't know about? And if there is a situation and there is something that you should know about, take responsibility. If you're a manager and you pull somebody aside and you ask them, is there something I can help you with? Is there something that I can do to make maybe your life a little easier? To maybe, little stuff, then take responsibility, take that next step. If they feel confident enough to tell you, whether you're a manager or a team leader in a big old company, or whether you're a manager or assistant manager in a little tiny company, if somebody's willing, if you pull them aside or you talk to them and they're willing to tell you what the situation is, be accommodating, respond appropriately. You're an adult, usually. You should know how to do this. Teach everybody how to listen. How important is that to just teach people how to listen? We don't do that enough. And if you're trying to make your voice heard, whether it's you're just learning how to make your voice heard or you've been working on this for a long time, listen to the people around you. Sometimes we get so caught up in our opinion and we get so caught up in knowing that we have to make this point. It's so important that we make this point that we kind of forget. So, we don't look around us either. We kind of set ourselves as the pedestal. So I want you to work on your mental health, but at the not by making other people feel bad. Just because you get to feel better doesn't mean you get to take people down with you or make people feel worse. Remember, we go back to helping rise up other people, because if we all rise up, we all get to feel better. And whether we're a woman, a minority, an introvert, even men who are just starting new positions sometimes feel like they need advice on how to making their voice heard, because nobody wants to be the low man on the totem pole. Trust me, that's a bad way to say it. But nobody wants to be the new person. And if you don't want to be the new person, then, take advice from other people. These are such important things. And by doing these things and your commitment to keep learning and respecting your employees, or, people that may come into your office to try to become employees, trainees, even, that it can make it so that it's going to make it a more comfortable situation and a more inviting place. And when you're inviting, then people want to stay, which is vital to your overall and personal wellness and well-being. Remember, mentalhealth.org describes mental health as our emotional and psychological and social well-being. And that's what we're here for, is to help all of those things. But I understand sometimes we just need to get out of our own way, which I know sounds weird, but, and with all the suggestions that I've given you, they're not everything, they're not everything. You can find tons of articles and tons of places to get training on self-confidence and tons of places to get breathing exercises. I actually love and teach breathing exercises to all of my clients. So if you do sign up for an appointment with me, you're going to learn those breathing exercises that will make you sound calmer and make you sound like you know what you're talking about and more, confident and self-assured. It's important, don't you think? Because, sometimes you need to find a way to smile when smiling's not that comfortable. And you need to take care of your mental state, because your mental state is just as important on a work day as it is on a weekend. And these are things that I hope resonate with you. And these are things that mean something, or that you'll be able to use something like this. And I hope that some of this, that some of this actually resonated, and it is a big help. So again, thank you for tuning in, but I would like to thank Interfanatic Digital Marketing for upgrading performance since 1999. Remember, Interfanatic will be there and have had the answer for over 20 years. Interfanatic is the most reliable source of websites and digital marketing, so find the Internet Fanatics at interfanatic.com. And I would also like to thank AnnieShirley.com, who have this unique Kickstarter going on to promote her 2 new Hubble Bubble Tiny Toes books called What's a Chakra and Hubble Bubble Teaches Zodiacs. So to check them out, just go on Kickstarter.com, type in the name Hubble Bubble Zodiac, and you'll be able to find it and check everything out. So again, thank you for listening today. And it has been a pleasure to even be a small part of your journey. I hope it's been calming and soothing for you. And mostly, I hope that wherever you are, you're better off than when you started. I'm Shirley, clinical hypnotherapist, advocate, and mental health first responder at whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com. I work together with my clients and hopefully you as a team to find a better way to get you back to being you without the fear, without the habit, or without the pain, either mentally or physically. Remember, I work online, so I'm with you wherever you need to be. And I understand that hypnosis isn't for everyone, so let's see if we can work together. Again, Shirley Yance, clinical hypnotherapist. And if you'd like to book a consultation, you can do that at whisperingzen.com. It has been my sincere pleasure to help you out today. And remember, take a deep breath, hold it, and exhale with a smile. Thank you for tuning in. Tell your friends about it, and I promise I will see you next week.
You're listening to the Hypno Fairy Godmother Show with Shirley Yance, only on LA Talk Radio.